There's a reason I don't usually just do videos that are simply lists of books I'm recommending, and I'm worried it's gonna show, but please bear with me because I'm so excited to be recommending these books. And yes, we should probably start a drinking game where you take a shot every time I say I'm so excited, except I like you guys and don't want you to die. Hi everyone, Rosie here. Welcome back to my channel. It's time to do some recommending. As I said, don't usually do this. I don't know, I feel better just talking about books as I read them and maybe referring to them later, not just talking about them maybe years after the fact, but it's okay because I wanted to make sure that I was putting out some recommendations before Book Buffet so that if you're at all stuck for things to include as the recommended by a moderator prompt, you'll have some stuff to check out, I guess. If you're like, what's Book Buffet? I've never heard of this, then check out my announcement video, which will be linked down below. It's a readathon in August. We're reading food writing. It should be really fun. I hope you'll join us. And yeah, let's recommend some books. Before I get into this list, I just want to specify a few things that I'm not going to say for every single book because they apply to literally all the books. First, obviously any book that I talk about in this video could count for a recommended book. Second, this is my non-fiction recommendations, as you probably will have seen already. So of course, all of these will work for the non-fiction prompt. And when it comes to the different continent prompt and new to you food prompt, I don't know where you're from, and I don't know what food you usually eat or what food you're unfamiliar with. So I can't exactly say this is on a different continent because you might be on that continent. You'll obviously just have to refer to yourself on that. The first book I'm going to recommend is Medium Raw by Anthony Bourdain. I mean, would it be a list of food book recommendations if we didn't include some Bourdain? Kitchen Confidential is our group read for the readathon, and I highly encourage you to check that out. But if you've already read Kitchen Confidential and thought, hey, I want another book with different content but like similar vibes, then you need to read Medium Raw. It was published 10 years after Kitchen Confidential and is sort of an updated look at a lot of the topics that Bourdain covered in Kitchen Confidential, but considering how the restaurant industry has changed, how he as a person has changed, how he's changed in his approach to a lot of things, and it's really fantastic. I listened to it in, I think, April this year, and I will link my wrap-up or something up here because I loved it. It was fantastic, and I highly recommend. This was published in or before 2020. Actually, all the books on this list, so I'm just gonna add that to my list of everything I recommend here fits for that square. I haven't read any super new food writing, so I can't recommend anything for the 2021 square, unfortunately. But it's also, I don't know if it's marketed as an essay collection, but to me it read very much like an essay collection, so if that's not a genre you've read a lot of, it could fit for a new to you genre. Although, again, I can't really say what to recommend for that prompt and what not, because it's going to depend on what you usually read. Also, I think you could argue that this is a broad scope book. It's really looking at a lot of different topics related to the food world and the restaurant industry and just his life in general. There's a lot of different things that come up in here. It's pretty broad. Next, I would like to recommend The Rituals of Dinner: The Origins, Evolution, and Eccentricities and Meaning of Table Manners by Margaret Visser. So a bit of a disclaimer. I read this many years ago now, and I only gave it 3 stars. So I can't say I necessarily recommend this as like, oh my goodness, it was a phenomenal book. However, it's such an interesting topic that I can't not include it. It is, as the title will tell you, all about table manners and why we do things the way we do and where those things that seem totally random come from, how things differ in different parts of the world. It's fantastic. Or, it wasn't necessarily a fantastic book, but the content in it is super interesting. Margaret Visser is a female author, so it could count as one of your multiple books by female authors. And I think you could also argue that this is either a microhistory or super broad scope, depending on your perspective. Hey, if you're persuasive enough, you could probably call it both. It feels very contradictory to say that, but it's a microhistory in that it's a history of table manners. That's pretty darn specific. But it's looking at table manners all throughout time and space. So that's pretty broad. I don't know. I like to have an easygoing approach towards readathon prompts. Just make your argument and go with it, and I'll support you on that. My third recommendation is Tea, the Drink That Changed the World by Laura C. Martin. This is a history of tea from ancient China, I think, to the present, and it tracks the spread of tea throughout the world, the way the preparation of tea has changed and has evolved through time and because of different tastes wherever it was being drunk. It's been a while since I read this, but I think it touches on some of the political and military things that have sprung up from tea, but I don't think it goes into super depth. So if you want a really good, solid explanation of the Opium Wars in China and Britain's involvement there, then this one maybe isn't the best, but if you want to learn about tea in general, then absolutely. This is another female author. Again, I think you could argue that this is a microhistory because it focuses so specifically on one ingredient, or you could argue that it's super broad scope because it's looking at that one thing throughout all of time and space. I don't know, you make your decision. And it definitely refers to Asia, I think the UK and the Americas, so almost certainly a different continent is mentioned in here, if that's something that you're struggling to find. Another one that I read quite a while ago but that I have to recommend is Cultured: How Ancient Foods Can Feed Our Microbiome by Katherine Harmon Courage. This introduces you to what is your microbiome in your gut and why should you care about it, what foods are good for it and helpful and in what ways, including some recipes. So if that's something you're interested in, if you want to like read about something and then try and make it, this would be a cool one to pick out. And it also incorporates a lot of the cutting edge science about these ancient foods and things that we're learning more and more about. So it's fantastic, it's a really cool combination, and it'll probably make you want to ferment something, because I know when I read this, I immediately was like, wow, I need to make sauerkraut. And I did, and it was really yummy. This is another female author. It's arguably, again, microhistory because it focuses on cultured and fermented foods, or broad scope because it's fermented foods throughout all of time. You might be sensing a pattern here. You might be sensing the kind of books that I like to read, but it is what it is. And I'm pretty sure that this will have some content from a different continent to you and about a food you probably haven't had before. You would have to eat a lot of different things to not find at least one thing in here that you haven't tried. And my last recommendation for this video is Hotbox: Inside Catering, the Food World's Riskiest Business by Matt Lee and Ted Lee. This is exactly what it says on the tin. It's all about the catering business. And actually, it's about the catering business basically in New York. It's not about the international catering world or anything even outside of New York City and the surrounding area in the US. It's very, very focused. But it's got great food, it's got great storytelling. The way the information in this is framed is done so well. The logistics side of it is so interesting, and it's just a really, really enjoyable book to read. So this one is definitely a microhistory. I cannot in any way claim that it might be broad scope because it's about catering in New York. Like, that's so specific, but it's so, so good. And I also read this one recently I think I read this in May, so I'll link my May wrap up here if you want to hear me talk about that then. But it's just a really fun book, and I highly recommend it if you want something a bit light and interesting and informative, but not super dense to balance out your TBR. Alright, those are all the books I'm going to recommend today. I'm not going to do more than that because honestly, I haven't read that much food writing, and I don't want to recommend books that I don't think are good. I don't want to go through and recommend every single book I've read about food just to try and bulk out this list. I'd rather keep it to ones that seem really interesting to me or that might be really interesting to you. Yes, these are kind of very weighted towards a few different prompts just because that's what my reading is like. But make sure you stay tuned because in a week, I think, a week or two, I'm going to have another video out with my fiction recommendations, and that is going to hit some very different prompts. So if you're worried about that, keep your eyes peeled or check out our Instagram. At time of filming, I haven't actually organized this yet, but I'm hoping to have some recommendations up there as well. And let me know down below, are you guys planning to participate? And if yes, what's on your TBR if you've started to think about it? And as always, if you liked this video, please give me a like down below. If you would like to see more of my videos, please hit subscribe, and thank you for watching.